Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Sharps for the World of the Mind. When you start to think about a brain, you start to look at one, it's a bit difficult to figure out exactly what we're looking at, isn't it? Because you've got basically 3 or 4 pounds of what is mainly fat and water. That's what a brain is made out of, and it deals in electrochemical impulses. Now, if you're looking at a brain that just came out of a human, and hopefully the human was dead first, it's a kind of an amazing, fatty, greasy kind of lump of electric head meat. And here's this lump of electric head meat, though, that can compose a symphony or build an atomic bomb. So you've got a problem, really. As you look at, for example, this rather good model of a human brain, well, we look at it and it looks at us, all right? But it doesn't look at us unless it has eyeballs attached, does it? And at what point does the eye become, the mechanical bits of the eye really become the optic nerve, which become the parts that you actually see within the brain? And what exactly does that mean? Now, a brain, then, is, in a way, it's almost a projective thing. It's almost a thing you look at, and whatever you think becomes part and parcel of it. The way you divide a brain up, okay? For example, there are subcortical tissues that have a lot to do with basic survival. They're down underneath. And we can divide the subcortical tissues, these wonderful things you can see here on the bottom of this model, from the cortical tissues up here, the big wrinkly bit where you do your thinking and all that sort of thing. And you can do that. You can also divide the brain by its hemispheres. A lot of nonsense written about that 40 years ago, left brain, right brain. That turned out to be complete gibberish unless you've had an actual surgical operation that divides the brain. But a neuroanatomist will divide the brain into dozens of different kinds of brain cells, and you can even divide the cortex into all sorts of wonderful little regions. Broca's area right here where you speak, it's on the left in most human adults. But when you think about dividing the brain up, how are you going to conceptualize that? And that's exactly why we're doing this part of this series. Because the brain doesn't come, popping out of mom, so to speak, in a body with a little instruction manual saying, this is how I work. You've got to figure this out. And that means that you're dealing with ideas about the mind and the brain. And those ideas are not born in the natural world. They're born out of people, or, God help us, sometimes committees of people. Now, that's important because there's a wonderful German word, Zeitgeist, means time ghost of all things, but nobody translates it that way. They translate it as the spirit of the times. All right? Humans and human committees and anybody who's thinking, really, is operating in a certain time and place. And that time and place is going to change the way they see the nature of the mind. And it's crucially important to understand that. Because if you don't understand where the ideas come from, if you say, my idea is how the mind works, all right? Well, maybe that idea is how the mind works. It's possible that you're reflecting actual concrete reality. It's also possible that you're not reflecting anything other than a trip around your own brain. Now, this is something we have to try to deal with in this part of the world of the mind. There's a series on our ideas and the nature of ideas. But where do you begin? One place we might want to try to begin is the point at which human beings first started having ideas about the mind. And that's a very difficult problem. Because all we really have from the very ancient world, we have a few stone tools kicking around, and we have a few bits and pieces of bone. All right? They used to talk about the missing link. Okay, well, that's now ridiculous. There are so many links, we're not entirely clear which ones are on the right route to modern humanity. But in psychology, in the science of the mind, we're not as concerned, really, with which bits of skull, which creature could have met with other creatures and so on. We're a little concerned with that. But our main concern here is the nature of things like thought and memory and emotion. Okay. Well, when do we start seeing living creatures literally, not necessarily talking, but thinking about the mind, thinking about how the mind works, what it is? Well, that's a little dicey, isn't it? Because basically you could start to say, okay, well, fair enough, I'm thinking about my mind, myself, who and what I am. As soon as I can recognize myself, as soon as I have self-recognition, some kind of self-image. But what exactly does that mean? Well, it's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Because a long-standing idea was if you can recognize yourself in a mirror, you have self-image, and you put a dab of lipstick on the highbrow of a chimpanzee or something and see if it poked the lipstick, and if it did, you won. If it didn't, you lost. The problem is it isn't that simple. Okay, yes, some primates other than humans do have self-recognition. You can see it in the mirrors, but there's been at least 1 or 2 studies showing it in elephants, for heaven's sake, and a marvelous study has now shown it, God help us, in a cleaner wrasse. It's a little fish about this long. Its brain looks like somebody sneezed. And not only can these damned cleaner wrasses, the wonderful little blue and yellow fish, not only can they apparently recognize themselves, they can pick themselves out of a little fishy light up. Okay, so this is no longer enough. This idea of, okay, I recognize selfness. Okay, you could argue that any animal in pain is feeling the pain, so in some way it recognizes selfness. That's a bit of a jump, isn't it? Because it would have to be talking to itself about the pain. But it doesn't really work, does it? So where can we actually start to see the beginning of a genuine human-like self-awareness? Well, you go back 3 to 4 million years, you start to get a variety of creatures. There's so many of them at this point, it's hard to work out who's who, all right? We used to just lump them all together as gracile Australopithecines, all right? The word means southern ape, Australopithecus africanus, for example, the southern ape of Africa, okay? And they weren't apes, that's the problem. Apes have various aspects of the skull, the spine comes in slightly differently and so forth. These were creatures who were upright walkers, at least a lot of the time, okay? They could climb better than us, at least quite a few of them could. But their teeth are interesting because they appear to have been omnivorous. There's another larger kind of these Australopithecines and similar creatures that we don't pay as much attention to because it's probably not on the main line to humanity. It may have been more of an herbivore, okay? And God knows if the little guys preyed on the big guys, and maybe that made them work in groups more. We don't really know. But the point about these creatures is their brain was much smaller. Now, this is a model of a brain, of a modern human brain, and it's about 1,400 cubic centimeters, okay? Since the brain is mainly made out of water and fat, the brain weighs about as much as water, so to speak, so 1,400 cubic centimeters is about 1,400 grams, give or take. Now, that said, the brain's been a little smaller now, okay? Over the last few years, the brain's gone down to 1,375. That's the current estimate, 1,375 cubic centimeters, because the world population, somewhat smaller people being more of the population. But it wasn't always this size, and in these Australopithecines and the other creatures like them, we don't know what they did for a living. Some of us think they probably did some hunting. Lots of people think they just did scavenging, okay? We don't really know. But the teeth show kind of a pattern that they were essentially omnivorous. They ate pretty much whatever they could get. Well, their brains are tiny. Their brains are 400 to 500 cubic centimeters, maybe a third of this thing here, all right? Tiny little damn brains. And they're not as developed either. Up here in the front, where a lot of the action is, a lot of our judgment and our ability to inhibit ourselves, our reasoning, come out of structures here in the front, the prefrontal cortex. Okay. But what's interesting about these tiny-brained guys and gals, whoever they were, is they don't appear to have made tools. They don't appear to have used them. The thing where you knock a bit of stone off another stone and use the sharp bit to tear the skin off an antelope so you can eat antelope. They don't seem to have done that. Now, interestingly, their brains are about the size of those of chimpanzees. And chimpanzees, has been studied, can make fairly primitive stone tools if you condition them. If you give them lots of fruit, they ask for grapes, you give them grapes. You only give them grapes if they knock bits off the rock, so you get a pointy rock. Okay, so chimps can do it, but they don't do it on their own. Now that said, chimpanzees do have some tool modification in the wild. They will groom sticks specifically to reach down into termite mounds. The termites grab on a stick. The chimp, nice snack of termites, okay? Now, I've tried that myself, trying to get termites out of a termite mound in South Africa. Damned if I can do it. I wasn't going to eat them. I just figured I'd maybe put them on the ground or put them in a nice new termite place. But I decided not to try to eat them, dear God. But the point is, there's something to this that I just don't have. Now, I've met a few people, wilderness guides in Africa, who are capable of doing what the chimps do, but I'm not quite clear what the difference is. Maybe somebody is, but they couldn't really articulate it. It seems to be happening at a level below the ability to describe, really. But chimps will also stick a long stick down in a column of army ants, and they'll eat the army ants off the stick, and they'll use leaves to brush up some water, get the water, okay. They have lots of this kind of tool use, but the idea of taking a rock and making another rock into a pointy rock or a sharp rock and slashing up an antelope with it, the chimps just won't do that on their own. But a million years or so later, you get a kind of creature lots of people deny even existed. It used to be, and sometimes still is, called Homo habilis, which means the handy guy, really, the handy person, the individual who is handy at making things. We say that because we find these creatures with a slightly larger brain, about 600 cubic centimeters, in deposits in the earth where we do find some tools. Now, they're not really very good tools, okay? In fact, I'm not much of a tool maker myself. I've tried to smash a few rocks into the equivalency of tools, but I can at least say this. These 600 cubic centimeter people, what do you want to call them, from all that time back, I can make tools pretty similar to those, because you basically just clunk the thing, and you get a kind of an edge on it, and you can then actually cut a slice off a pork roast. I know because I've tried. Okay, use flint or chert for this. That means you have to look for the right kind of rock. I mean, a hunk of granite isn't going to do you. But the point is, here were people or something anyway, with brains about half our size, about 600 cubic centimeters, a little smaller than half, and they're running around bashing the rocks a bit and slashing stuff with the rocks and having a wonderful time. Okay, now, fair enough. But is that more like somebody assembling a modern electric drill, or is it more like a chimpanzee stripping the leaves off a stick to get termites? And it's a very difficult question. Until somebody develops a time machine, we're unlikely to figure it out. Okay, we don't see any evidence, for example, of speech in such people. It's a very interesting problem as to how did they communicate, what did they do? Were they stuck at the kind of basically symbolic but very inflexible communication that chimps have, or could they really talk? Could they make jokes? Okay, it's a very interesting question. My guess is no, and that's also the guess of most people. But they still are not having anything we would want to call psychology. So we get up to about 2 million years ago, and you don't really have anybody sitting around going, I wonder what I am. What is my relationship to the world? Okay, here's Unga over here, here's Oog over here. I like Unga, I don't like Oog. I'd hit Oog in the head with a pointy rock, except his big brother Ugu has an even bigger rock than me. You don't have people doing this theory of mind thing, as far as we know, in these 600 cubic centimeter people. But by 1.8 million years ago, you've got people running around, and they're absolutely people. Okay. There, some of the groups of these people, I hesitate to call them races because it's very difficult to know exactly what these were from the fossils, but some of them were taller on average than we are. Okay, Homo habilis, the Australopithecines, much shorter. Okay, but these people are called Homo erectus in broad terms. There are a variety of different varieties of them, and the nomenclature is always in flux, really. And assume the obvious jokes have been told, by the way. Homo erectus just means the people who stand up. They stand erect. Okay. Now, granted, so did the Australopithecines and Homo habilis, as far as we know, but, give it up. Point being, these peoples had brains that overlap in size with ours. About 1,000 cubic centimeters, give or take. Now, 1,000 cubic centimeters is the average size of a brain in a 5-year-old modern human child. And pretty obviously, although 5-year-old children have a lot of rather odd ideas, and they're often quite sticky if they get into any kind of marmalade or peanut butter or something, they're obviously human, okay? And they're running around able to talk with this 1,000 cubic centimeter brain, etc., etc. And by the way, you will still meet a few adults who have 1,000 cubic centimeter so to speak, 1,000 cubic centimeter hat size. It's within the human norm, okay? Well, I shouldn't say that really. It's at least statistically possible, but it's a hell of a lot smaller than the 1,400 odd cubic centimeter brain of a modern. Okay, so these Homo erectus, can we take ideas about mind back that far, back 1.8 million years? And we really want to know. They made stone tools too, but their stone tools are amazing. They're called the Acheulean hand axe. This wonderful teardrop shape. Most of them are about this big, but they made a few of them that are like this big. They're probably some kind of ceremonial object. Maybe Oog took it over to Unga and said, look what I can do, you mate with me. But we have no idea if that really happened. But these, I got to admit something, I'm not much of a flint napper, but I can turn out the kind of stone tool that a 600 cubic centimeter brain person can. So I've got that going for me. I've tried to make a couple of these Acheulean stone axes. Now, there are archaeologists and physical anthropologists much more talented than I am who can make these tools. They can be made by modern people. It's not something, we've lost the art. No. But they're difficult as hell. They're hard to make. You got to, meat chop, chip off, boom, not a problem. But these things, you got to really think, really look. Yeah, my gosh, if I hit the thing right there, is it going to break off? Is it going to crack off? Is my angle too big? Is my angle too small? We don't even know how they use these. My guess is they wrapped a piece of leather around it. They could use it as an awl, or use it to cut with, or maybe use it a little pound with a little on the back of the thing. Not very much, but a little bit. Some of these, they actually carve the thing around something like a fossil seashell or something, which indicates something like, hey, that's pretty. I like that. I'm going to carve me one of them axes around it. I can't really make them, but they're obviously something, number one, that is very sophisticated. You're thinking ahead to do this. But it doesn't mean you're thinking about mind, does it? Okay, and if you really want to make trouble, you can say, well, there's a variety of fish and things that make very beautiful patterns in the dirt. Maybe they weren't really thinking, haha, why did they make a really big one? Well, to my mind, that's some kind of symbolic behavior. Look at this mighty impressive thing I have made. Other people might say, well, the guy just happened to be really, the guy or the gal happened to be really, really dumb and they accidentally made a huge axe. That makes very little sense, but you can't say definitely, okay, that never happened. Okay, but Homo erectus, why are they so interesting to us? They can make these more complex tools, okay? And the tools didn't, as far as we know, have moving parts or anything, but they made some beautiful stone tools, sometimes even artistic, with like a little fossil shell coiled there at the center of the hand axe. Well, did they have our kind of self-image? Did they think about themselves? Well, some of these were literally cave people. They lived in caves, and most of the fossils from Chokochen in China were lost during World War II. Okay, but in those caves were found ochres, red ochre, and various colors of ochre. Ochres are clays, right? They're kind of soft clays, and lots of peoples around the world use them as kind of a sunburn cream because you smear this stuff on yourself, and it keeps you from getting overheated. Okay, well that's wonderful. The problem is there are a variety of animals that take mud baths for the same kind of reason, so it doesn't tell you much. But the reports are that these ochres were found in these wonderful caves in China were actually formed into the equivalent of crayons. They basically were sort of, you take a lump that's kind of a long thing. Think about something about the shape of a magic marker or something, right? Now, the point of that is, if you've got a crayon, basically a large crayon here, of a red or golden or yellow clay or whatever, you're not going to, that's just not an effective sunburn cream. It's not a good way of applying it. You're not going to do it. You want me deal with something, boom, that's what you want. You don't want this. What that implies very strongly is they were decorating themselves. Just like you go down to the mall today and watch these kids coming out, or young people, whoever they are, maybe old people, I don't know. They come out of the wonderful little mall shop with big holes in their ears or their lip with a piece of steel through their lip they could anchor a major naval vessel to. Okay? They're decorating the hell out of themselves. They print the names of people. I don't know what happens when you break up in a relationship. I guess you cross out that name, put another name on. But humans are decorating themselves, and they're decorating themselves because they have a complex self-image. They have to. Okay, because what they're saying is they're saying something to you about themselves. And that means they're thinking about you, they're thinking about themselves. They absolutely have a theory of mind. How will people behave toward me? Okay. Right now, apparently, there's a huge fad of young people, junior high and so forth, high school, running around out in the freezing snow without any coats on and wearing shorts because apparently that's somehow cool. Now, it is cool. It's going to be damn cold. I used to live in Wyoming, that old 20 below thing. I'm not sure I'd want to be wearing shorts in that. But the point is, it's far more important, in my theory of mind, for the other adolescents to think I'm cool, I don't wear a coat, than it is to be literally cool and be getting frostbite. This is theory of mind. Now, I didn't say it was smart, but it's theory of mind. And if you've got crayons, to my mind at least, and feel free to disagree, it's still America, but feel free to disagree, but you're doing something with that crayon to tell other people about your ideas about yourself, and that is absolutely psychology. You're printing on your face with this thing, maybe lovely painting strikes or something. Maybe it's war paint, maybe it's love paint. We really don't know. But you're saying something. You're saying, I'm the chief, or I'm real fierce, or I'm real purty. You're saying something to other people, and that means you've got a theory of mind that involves your own mind. You're thinking about yourself with a brain size of only 1,000 cubic centimeters. Well, there's some bit of more evidence of these Homo erectus people able to think in these ways, because we find them in very interesting places. Now, we find them on the continents of the Old World. They never managed to get to the New World, to the North or South America, as far as we know. But we do find them on the islands of Indonesia. And you say, well, so what? They walked there, because during the Ice Age, those wonderful islands there south of the great landmass of Southeast Asia, many of them were connected together. It was basically an extra subcontinent that has become drowned as the great ice sheets melted and the water came in. But some of the islands you find the fossils on were islands then. They always have been in human terms, all right? And that means that somehow human beings got from one island to another. Now, maybe they were just great explorers, maybe they wanted to travel, maybe they were escaping from the other people on shore who may very well have been wanting to eat them. We really don't know. But they went from island to island, and that means, and here I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. I could see a number of archaeologists getting into a cold rage because of what I'm saying here. They must have had some kind of watercraft. Now, feel free for everybody to go boo for a minute. That's not generally accepted, and feel free not to accept it, but I don't know how else you're going to explain this. Now, I don't mean they were sailing around on PT boats with a patch over one eye and a parrot shouting yo-ho-ho, okay? What I am suggesting is they must have had at least, they might even have had canoes, but I doubt that. I doubt it. Canoes are very sophisticated. They must have had rafts. The old idea that maybe you floated from one island to another on a log. Well, first of all, that part of the ocean is and always has been infested with some very nasty, very large crocodiles, a lot of very nasty sharks. And by the way, it turns out that Komodo dragons can swim, all right? It's not a great place to be sitting on a log. Moreover, if you're going to found a population someplace else and you're on a log, first you better be female. Second, you better be pregnant. And third, you must have very low social standards about 15 years from now. Okay? Now, I suppose we can float two Homo erectus across there on a log, man and woman, they're looking at each other going, John, Marcia, or something, maybe, I don't know. And then the sharks come, and that ruins everything. But if you've ever done a bit of snorkeling or scuba, well, not so much scuba, but snorkeling, so you kind of a snorkeling hike along some beautiful reef out there in the tropical islands, you find that when you come out on the beach, you're not doing too well. First thing you need is some damn water, okay? And, well, if you're on a new island, you don't know where the water is, do you? You also need some food. Oh, that food looks good. Let me grab this snake, and it's a Russell's viper or some other deadly damn thing. Or, first thing you come out of the water, back in the ancient world, there were some big damn animals. I've talked about the Komodo dragon. Okay. Back in the day, there was basically a Komodo dragon. It was a gigantic goanna lizard. It was twice the size of a damn Komodo dragon. There's a good chance it wanted to know if you tasted like chicken. All right. So coming crawling out on the beach going, dear God, I need rescue, and there's nobody to rescue you. Okay. Or you're not going to walk back to your car and dry off and drive back to the hotel. My guess is they were on rafts. And my guess is if you're going to sail across any level of sea, any level where you're surfing waves and things, where you might get trapped offshore for a little while before you can find a bay and so on and so forth, you're going to have water. You're going to take water with you. You're going to take some food with you. And rafts, if you've ever tried to make one in a pond when you were a kid, they're not that easy to build, are they? Now, that, to my mind, is the best evidence for the idea that Homo erectus must have been able to communicate somehow. Whether you want to call it true language or not, I don't know. But you have to be, okay, I am Oog, right? Unga, you please go, or maybe I don't even say please, maybe I just say I hit you if you don't. But you please go get some lianas, we're going to tie her on this bamboo. And Unga, we need more bamboo, bring that over here. Now, meanwhile, I'm going to sew these two pieces of a dead pig together to give us a nice canteen, okay, so we can carry our water as we go over to the promised land there, whatever island it is. Now, I don't suggest, like as Polynesians did, I don't suggest modern humans, modern people, as Polynesians did, they sailed away into what was presumably the unknown, many days of blue water, those marvelous canoes that they built. We're not talking about that. We're talking about seeing an island over there, but there's a bunch of crocodiles in the way, and we got to get from here to there. Building a raft is not a one-person thing. They must have been working in groups. They can say, so what? Lots of things work in groups. Wolves work in groups. African wild dogs work in very scary groups. Okay, chimpanzees operate in groups when they prey on monkeys, which they do fairly frequently. Yes, but the fact is, if you watch a pride of lions attacking something, okay, they always attack it in basically the same way. Group behavior in the natural world tends to be a rather stereotyped thing, where a pack of wild dogs behaves one way, a pride of lions behaves another way, and so on. A group of chimpanzees behaves another way, as opposed to a troop of baboons. They behave completely differently in different terrains. They don't do something new. Okay, you never have a chimpanzee suddenly come down with a little Easter basket full of grenades, going, grenades for everybody, or something. That doesn't happen, okay? But if the humans were building some kind of, and admittedly, I bet it was very primitive watercraft. They're not sailing around on some kind of steamship or something. But they've got to be doing group behavior in the service of novelty. That means somebody had an idea in his or her head of how we can float across this water. And my guess is they tried it a few times on different bunches of branches and logs and sticks and stuff. Either someplace, maybe in freshwater where you didn't have any sharks, or maybe some guarded little bay. We don't know. But if humans, and we seem to see this, if Homo erectus, with their 1,000 cubic centimeter brain, about 400 cubic centimeters smaller than ours, if they were running around doing this, if they were actually doing two things, engaging in self-referential theory of mind behavior, where they're decorating their faces with their crayons, going, I'm fierce, I'm the chief, I'm real purty, whatever it is, and if they're engaged in group behavior in the service of novelty, you have to say they were thinking about psychology. They were thinking about mind. So that's how far back we can go, about 1.8 million years. Now, peoples after that came up with some pretty damned interesting ideas too. Okay, some groups of Homo erectus, we believe, evolved into much more powerfully built, stocky humans. Neanderthal is the general classification for many of these in Europe and parts of Asia. Denisovans, a marvelous new categorization based on legitimately on fossils, and they apparently were much, much taller than Neanderthals. Neanderthals were a couple of inches shorter than we are on average, but they're massively more powerful. They could have bench pressed hundreds of pounds more than modern athletes could. All right, and we know more about the Neanderthals than we do about the Denisovans. Denisovan discoveries are very, very recent. There's very few fossils, too. But Neanderthals are extremely interesting to us. Now, first of all, when I was in college, and that was a long time ago, that was about the time the dinosaurs invented dirt, but that was before a lot of DNA studies, and we just looked at the skulls, and we knew damned well that Neanderthal and modern humans mated with each other because you can see it in the anatomy. And then suddenly DNA studies showed, no, we never mated with Neanderthals. It became kind of almost a Victorian thing. Oh, no, you wouldn't mate with a Neanderthal. Okay. Well, now, of course, many of the same laboratories that said, no, there's no DNA evidence, and they've proven that unless your ancestry is purely from certain African populations, it has to be absolutely pure, you have Neanderthal DNA. And some of the labs that said, no, it never happens, now they've discovered that it did happen, and they're getting awards and cash prizes. But it turns out we did interbreed with Neanderthals, but there's a little bit of Neanderthal DNA in us, but the Neanderthals in general are gone. Now, what the heck happened to them? Well, nobody really knows, but we do know the Neanderthals could kill any game they wanted, and they did. They tended to focus on deer and oddly enough on small horses, okay, but they could kill anything they wanted to, up to and including mammoths. They had a very complex toolkit. Their Mousterian stone tools, oddly enough, aren't as elegant as Homo erectus, but they are often made by a method where they cut blades off of a core of stone that gave you much greater efficiency. But the Neanderthals weren't all about efficiency. They're weapons. They're hunting weapons. These were hunting people. Okay? If you want to say they were all vegetarians, I've got two little words for you. Ice Age. Okay, you're not going to find all that damn broccoli. What they ate was meat. All right. And these hunting peoples had rather crude weapons, more stabbing things than throwing or shooting things. Okay? Not like moderns at all. And they tended not to follow game to its breeding grounds. They tended to let the game either basically come to them, although they were migratory, but they let the game come to them. And these Neanderthals fascinate me personally for two reasons. The first is they don't seem to have overpopulated. Now, they had horrible lives. They really did. If you look at the pattern of bone breaks in Neanderthals, they have a pattern of bone breaks similar to that of a modern rodeo rider, okay, because they were getting up close and personal with some very big, nasty animals and turning it into roast, all right? But they probably lived quite a bit less than we do, although there's a few chemical anomalies about that testing, but they didn't live as long as we do. They were shorter than we are, much stockier than we are. They were not a bunch of idiots. I mean, they were able to make this rather complex chemical glue that they made their compound spears with, etc. But we do know this, that modern humans came roaring out, probably out of Africa, and basically started a crime wave. Okay, pretty soon, by about the figure varies from year to year, but about 30,000 years ago, maybe a bit more, possibly a bit less, the Neanderthals are gone. Okay. What you see happening in Europe, which is our best fossil record, is the big game is dying off. Modern people eat mammoths. There's a culture built their houses out of pieces of mammoth, and these people are running around the equivalent of sweatshirts with a big M on it, so to speak, going, "We are the mammoth men." Okay, what about the mammoth women? Them too, and you kill pretty much all the mammoths. The mammoths are going, "Can't we all just get along?" No. Okay. Well, modern people follow the game to where it breeds. Modern people wind up being something of an environmental disaster, quite frankly. And you can watch the game going from elephants and rhinos that you get once in a while, usually go after deer and horses and things like that. And then they start winding up eating rabbits and rats and mice and things. Eventually, I suppose you go to lobsters. Can you imagine how hungry the first person was to eat a lobster? It doesn't look like food, does it? It looks like a heavily armed bug with an attitude. I mean, it's like, stamp on it. Oh, that tastes good. So you wind up, though, with a much impaired food supply, and thousands of years later, that results in the very nutrition-deficient agricultural diet that we see so tragically, really, in many ancient peoples who were forced onto this all plant with occasional bit of protein diet. But the Neanderthals don't have that problem. They're big, they're strong, they're huge, they're eating away until they run into the new neighbors, us, okay? Another very interesting thing about them, though, they don't overpopulate. Maybe they weren't capable of it. Maybe they just didn't have the technology. Maybe they were too dumb to follow the game to its breeding ground. Or maybe they were expert observers in the natural world that realized, hey, we're going to have the next generation. Leave some eggs, leave some young, let them grow up, let them get bigger and fatter. We have a lot of wonderful rock art from modern people drawing they drew a lot of things other than hunting magic. It's not all hunting magic, but they'll often draw a prey animal, a game animal, like a large horse, say, okay? And they'll always draw it pregnant. You get the horse and the unborn fetus, right? So modern people are pretty destructive the way we hunted. Moderns also kill each other. They kill each other in great numbers. You expect to lose an appreciable portion of your young males and frequently of your young females in warfare in modern populations of modern humans. Okay? Neanderthals don't seem to have killed each other. We do have a lot of injured Neanderthals, but it's kind of injury you get if you get hit in the head by an Irish elk or something. Okay? I used to tell classes, we don't know of any Neanderthal homicides, and it turns out I was wrong. We have at least one clear evidence of a Neanderthal homicide. A Neanderthal was killed by another human. The problem is that experts in this area, which I am not, say that the type of spear he was killed with was one that Neanderthals did not make. He was apparently killed by a modern. Now, that doesn't mean you had World War Zero, the revenge of the Neanderthals. I mean, you might have, you might not. That far back, you're not going to find the evidence of something like that. But these Neanderthals, they're in our evolutionary line, although they're certainly not our ancestor in that sense. They didn't suddenly go, oh, we're no longer Neanderthals, now we're humans, let's invent the sports car. That didn't happen, all right? Some Neanderthals grafted onto the modern human stream, and by the way, as the food supply got worse and worse, there is some evidence, it's very disputed, that the Neanderthals stopped making the big heavyweight tools they had used, okay? And started making what's called the Châtel-Perronian complex. Now, that may or may not certainly be Neanderthal, but they're lighter, flimsier tools, the kind of things modern people use, and they're much more appropriate for getting a rabbit than, say, an elk. Okay, lots of people in modern academic environments, frankly, do not hunt. They've never hunted, and they're not too crazy about the idea, quite frankly. But the fact of the matter is that if you're going after something like a bear, you probably want a big honking bullet, something out of a 45-70, let's say. And if you're going after some much lighter game, you're going to go for a smaller bullet. So the tools, the apparent crudity of a Neanderthal tool is just a suggestion. May be the same relationship, not as stupid to smart, but as a big crude 44 Magnum bullet compared to a little bitty elegant slim 22. They have different purposes. But we don't know. We simply don't know. The evidence is not that good. Okay. And by the way, though, when you bring up hypotheses like that, lots of people become enraged because their ideas differ from your ideas. And lots of people say, no, it's my idea. No, that's chimps that do that. It's my idea. Therefore, it's right. I am the arbiter of the real natural world. And maybe they're not. I'm sure as hell not. Very important to know the difference between ground truth, factual reality, and my ideas. And my ideas may come, as we're going to see in this series, from where I am and when I am. But these Neanderthals are very interesting to us. Very interesting. Not just that they don't seem to have overpopulated, not that they apparently didn't kill each other, at least not enough to show up significantly in the fossil record. They seem to have had funerals. Now, right there, I can make an awful lot of people mad because it goes in and out. The idea of whether the Neanderthals actually buried the dead in genuine funerals. At certain times, historically, everybody's been sort of required to believe it and wound up in the popular science magazines. Other times, no, it's never happened. Well, if you go to the Smithsonian Institution, it's a wonderful place because they have a Neanderthal burial. It's a mock-up. All right, and this poor guy's dead, and he's been buried in a fetal position. And the Smithsonian has done something quite marvelous, I think. They've wrapped him up in this cord. He's there in a fetal position, wrapped up. Now, why would they do that? Because certain peoples of southern Africa used to have a mystical tradition that they would bury the dead in exactly that posture, wrapped up that way, so the dead man's spirit couldn't follow you in vengeance. Okay? And the Smithsonian, now we have no idea if these people had that belief. We just know the guy was found roughly in that position. The Smithsonian's taken some license there. But over him, there's a Neanderthal man and a Neanderthal woman, and they don't look that different from anybody you might see in the street. They maybe look a little more athletic or something, and the guy has a hell of a lot more fur on his face. But they look pretty similar. And the guy is standing there, and God knows what he's doing, some kind of religious thing. He's holding his hand out. Maybe he's taking the Boy Scout oath, I don't know. And the woman is flinging a big chunk of thigh meat into that grave there. Okay, and many of these graves were found with stone tools in them. And some have been found not with detritus bones, like chicken bones from a picnic, but with bones where somebody put a nice chunk of meat in there, something you'd want to eat yourself, and they threw it into the grave. And in one place, Zawishimishanadar in Asia, you have a grave that there's a hell of a lot of flower pollen on top of it. Looks like the cat threw flowers there, okay? Now, if you want to make trouble, and who doesn't, I've got a stack of three scientific papers right over there, that says that Neanderthal burial is hogwash. It was actually created by a bunch of rabbits. The rabbits basically burrowed through here. They basically dropped this guy's body in the equivalent of the garbage disposal, and some other rabbits burrowed through, and there's meat there, etc., etc. And they're sure they're right because it's a computer simulation. Computer simulations have quite a history of being incorrect. You might want to look much more at the actual fossil record. The problem is once you dig it up, it's gone, isn't it? So take some damn good pictures before you leave a fossil dig. But the point is this. Analysis in aggregate. If you look across all these burials all over the place, did the hyenas really chew this stick into something like a musical instrument? Well, if they are, they're very geometric hyenas, all right? Did the rabbits really burrow down here? I'm seeing little rabbits in a team, one rabbit going, team, go, team. No, they don't do that. And the idea that you're getting all of this indication of burial from so many sites around the Neanderthal world, it's very difficult, at least for me, to believe that this was all inadvertent. That none of them had any burial rituals. They just got tired of the body when it smelled bad. They pushed it into a hole, and then they put some meat in there. No, a hyena put some meat in there. It doesn't. Well, feel free to believe it or not. It makes many people very angry. But you see, if the Neanderthals were really doing this, they believed in an afterlife. There's no not the flowers necessarily. If there were flowers, the idea is that somehow pollen got washed in there, and that could have happened at Shanidar. But the idea is, look, you're going to put some meat down in there. The idea is the poor sod, male or female, is going to need some meat in the next world, wherever the hell that is. And you put some stone tools down there, well, they're going to need some stone tools in the next world. You get the idea. The next world's going to be something like this one, probably not exactly alike, and possibly the mammoth gods are there. We really don't know. But why would you think that that was the case at all? Why is it, and this is a true fact, as opposed to a false fact, that all humans all over the world, all human groups, have invented some kind of religion? We don't know about Homo erectus, we really don't, but Neanderthal may, like us, have had dreams. I've had dreams. I remember a dream looking out from the mountains of southern Laos, at the beautiful blue Mekong flowing out to the sea and gigantic vehicles around me. And the reason you can be stupid in a dream, by the way, is because down here at the base of the skull is a wonderful little structure called the reticular activating system, and it isn't giving as much juice to your upper brain as it would be normally when you're sleeping. In other words, parts of your brain are actually more active, but the brain's a little more relaxed in general, and that means you're not getting quite as much blood up here. So personally, I know a lot of people who are dead, and they keep showing up in my dreams. And I just have conversations with them. It never even occurs to me they're dead. And every so often, my RAS down here, maybe I ate a little too much too late. It gives me a nice burp of energy. And I'm looking at the person. I'm going, hey, wait a minute, you're dead. How could you be here? How come you keep? They'll say something like, oh, I got better. I'm just going, oh, fine, not a problem. So the point is, in a dream, the world is different, isn't it? Because the fact is, the Mekong is not blue, it's brown. In my dream, okay? In my dream, it looks like a trout stream. In reality, it's this brown, sludgy thing heading out to sea. There are no mountains there in the south of Laos, okay? There just aren't any, okay? So they're not there, okay? Or on the other side of the river either. They're just not there. And these giant vehicles I may see, well, there's no vehicle that big in the world, okay? Now, I have two choices here, though, don't I? Because I've seen these things. They've had an effect on my consciousness because I thought, wow, that was a really beautiful river. It's had an effect on my consciousness. And I think if it has effects, it must be real. So a dream is real in that sense. I mean, I don't mean to suggest it's real in the sense that it's physical reality someplace. I mean, Edward Abbey, the author, once asked the question, is a mirage real? Well, it's a real mirage. Okay. Now, people may respond to a mirage as if it's real. The mirage has an effect in the world. You go to it hoping for water. That's how we know a thing is real. Does it have an effect in the world? And a public replicable effect. That's a problem with dreams because they're not public. But, point being, here's my brain, or somebody's brain, 4.5 inches across, about 2% of your body weight. Okay, weigh 200, brain's 3 to 4 pounds thereabouts. Well, I'm seeing this enormous space of Southeast Asia, looking up into the beautiful sky there, looking out across the wonderful emerald jungles at the brilliant blue Mekong River, which doesn't look anything like the real thing, but when I wake up, I've got that memory. Those hundreds of cubic miles I'm looking at, Are they really? Is the most logical thing to say they're inside this 4.5 inches of electric head meat? Or is the more logical thing to say, I went somewhere else? It's a heck of a lot like our world, but over there the Mekong's blue, here it's brown. Over there they have bigger vehicles. Okay. Now, I want to make this fairly clear. Okay, that's not really a piece of insanity on my part. No, I am a neurocentric modern person, meaning I think things come out of the brain. If a bush catches fire and it starts talking to me, I'm going to assume I have a brain tumor, not that the Lord is sending me a message, okay? But ancient peoples didn't think this way, and it's a good bet very ancient peoples didn't either. They were what we call theocentric. There is spirit, there is God at the center of everything. One of the great historians of philosophy said that the ancient world basically confronts you not as it, but as thou. Okay, it wouldn't surprise you a hell of a lot if some animal suddenly started prophesying to you. It'd be surprising, but it wouldn't be as surprising as a modern person who immediately thinks, holy crap, I'm having a hallucination. I've got to get to a psychiatrist. All right? The point is, I know dreams come out of the brain because I've watched the wonderful little EEG things going when people are in REM sleep and yada, yada, yada. The neurocentric view is apparently correct. Okay? But, I'll go beyond that. It's correct. But ancient peoples didn't know that. Ancient peoples didn't even know the brain was the seat of consciousness. The ancient Egyptians, when they turned you into a mummy, they saved most of your organs, these wonderful canopic jars, hearts here, livers there, kidneys, whatever the hell. Brain, they just scooped it the hell out through your nose and threw it away. So ultimately, we now know that apparently something that's impossible is absolutely possible. That mighty vision of Southeast Asia in my mind, it's right here in the 4.5 inches of electric head meat. But ancient peoples, and some peoples in the modern world, think in a dream you go someplace, and where do? You go to a land where the dead live. And there you are. You have the idea of an afterlife, and if there's an afterlife, there's a part of the body that you really don't understand, the soul. And that, by the way, is where we get our word psychology. Okay? Excuse my pronunciation, it's terrible, but psychology probably used to be pronounced psyche logos. Okay. Now, the Greek word logos means a coherent account or a logical, basically similar to logic, right? If you're writing a dissertation on factual science or on philosophy, it has to make sense, right? It's logical. That's a logos. So psychology is the logos of, well, today we mispronounce it as psyche. Back in the day, it appears to have been psyche. Now, so what? So lots of words and lots of languages are onomatopoetic. There are languages where that means that a thing the word is what the thing sounds like. There are languages where the word for squirrel is basically a chirp, like a squirrel would make. Okay? Well, psyche, the breath. Our word is, as in, this is a thing, is related to ancient osmi, okay? Things had to do with breathing. Okay. Now, ancient peoples didn't know about oxygen. They didn't know about erythrocytes, alveolar cells doing the transfer and all. They had no idea about that. But they did know that if somebody was breathing, they might be coming at you, and if you stuck a big knife in their head, they stopped breathing, and a few days later they started to smell funny. In other words, you've got an absolute correlation between breath and selfhood. And this may be where we get the idea of the soul. And if we're right about these Neanderthals, these souls are actually running about going to another world that we now know is inside our 4.5 inches of electric head meat. And if I have a spicy dinner after 8:30, I have even more bizarre dreams, so I know damn well. I don't know what the relationship, between a nice spicy dinner and my brain is. I really don't know. I just know I have more nightmares if I have dreams if I do that. Well, so fair enough. We know the dreams are in the head. We know that. But lots of people didn't. And it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? That this idea, which turns out not to be correct, that you really don't go to another wonderful world where the dead live with a different colored river and mountains where there are now plains and so on and so forth. But it starts you on the route to wondering about your place in the world and what you are and who you are and how you interact with other people. You're painting yourself, I'm fierce, I'm real pretty, whatever you're painting. You need Unga and Ugu here to help you build this raft, or if you're not building a raft, you may need them to help you kill the Irish elk, which is going to give you lots and lots of meat for the entire time. Problem is it has gigantic bloody great antlers. You've got to do this in a group. And if you're used to killing some other kind of animal, maybe we have to work in a group in a new way, like building a watercraft to get this one. And if this is true, The genesis of thinking about the self goes back at least 1.8 million years. And we see facets of it going right through human tool use, possibly through human navigation at sea, in creatures that weren't our species, our wonderful Homo sapiens sapiens species, right? It's a wonderful word. Homo sapiens sapiens means the wise person. We're so wise we named us twice. And those Neanderthals, those very odd people, tremendous power, but apparently they didn't kill each other. And we see this idea of mind sneaking through like a main river at Noti. This idea of mind then comes into the modern world, into modern human beings, with the advent of modern human beings, sometime around a couple 100,000 years ago, give or take a couple 100,000 years. Right now that fossil record is in flux, okay? But we've been this kind of creature for a couple 100,000 years, 100,000 at least, thereabouts. Okay? The brain has changed. The brain's gotten a little bit smaller in the last 50 years, okay? We know the brain's been getting a bit smaller for the last 20,000. The basic concept, it's been called the idiocracy hypothesis after that wonderful movie. The idea, it's just an idea. The idea is that, well, we rely more on other people so we don't have to have quite as big a brain. Nobody knows if that's true. But at the end of the day, this idea of we are a creature that looks at itself has been moving through humanity like some kind of main circuit cable for 1.8 million years. And what we need to do next is talk about what that means for us, for Homo sapiens sapiens. How did we start to develop the ideas we have? Because the fact is, we did something that the Neanderthals did very little of, if any: art. What do we see in modern humans from our art, going back perhaps tens of thousands of years? We'll be continuing that in this series. I'm Dr. Matthew Sharps. This is The World of the Mind. Hope you subscribe if you feel like it.